I want to begin by thanking Chief Wise for his welcome onto traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw people. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Elder, for your words, for your prayer. Thank you also for reminding us about the true spirit of reconciliation, which is one of listening, one of respect, one of engaged dialogue, one in which we actually listen to each other and learn from each other and grow together. That's what we need to do together in reconciliation. It's what we need to do in a broad range of things, in a large, broad range of issues. Now, we are going to have a conversation today that is I think an essential part of democracy, being able to actually ask questions of your representatives, the people who are responsible for serving you and representing you well, making sure you have an opportunity to express your concerns, make sure you have an opportunity to be heard, and actually get an opportunity to hear my perspective and the government's perspective on the way we need to move forward. That's what this exercise is about, and I'm really touched to see so many people come out today. I apologize for the lateness. One of the things that we love about this beautiful part of the world, and why I keep coming back to visit, why I'm so proud to have spent so many years visiting here and growing up for so many years, is... Okay. Thank you. Pleasure to see you guys. Thank you for being here. We're going to have an opportunity to hear from all sorts of people, and most people are able to be respectful and listen, and I look forward to hearing their concerns. This is not about... Nice of you to show up at a town hall with the Prime Minister. The opportunity... Okay, let's try and keep it respectful. Let's try and allow people their moments of outburst, because that's going to happen. But let's also know that a lot of people came out here to engage and to listen with the Prime Minister, to have an opportunity to engage in democracy. And I know this is not the kind of welcome that the Snuneymuxw people expect. Sir. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people are here to actually engage in this conversation. So I'm fairly certain. I'm fairly certain they're pleased to hear a little bit from you, but don't want to spend an hour and a half listening to you. So if you could have a little respect for everyone here, that would be most appreciated. Because this is, at the essence, what democracy is all about. Democracy is about listening and learning, growing together, understanding that in a country like Canada of incredible diversity, there will always be a broad range of views, a broad range of perspectives, including that one, and we have to listen to them and have to acknowledge them, even if we disagree with them. But part of building a stronger community, a stronger country, is learning to listen to each other, is learning to find the areas of agreement, the areas of common ground, and working forward. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. I am going to endeavor to answer as many questions as I possibly can from all of you on a broad range of topics, and I look forward not just to being able to share with you my perspective, but to learn from your perspectives, to learn from as many different perspectives in this room as I possibly can, because that's important for me, and it's also important for for the members of Parliament and ministers here. So I want to highlight once again the ministers who are here, Jody Wilson-Raybould and Harjit Sajjan, who are proud British Columbians, and glad to have you here with all the great work you're doing. Pam Goldsmith-Jones, who is our MP for West Vancouver and a parliamentary secretary, who's a good friend to folks here on the island. And also, I heard that Sheila Malcolmson was here. Where's Sheila? Thank you very much for being here. I'm glad you were able to come. And I heard that Gord Johns might be here as well. Is Gord maybe? Okay, there we go. I spent a little time on a fishing boat with Gord a number of years ago, before either of us were as far advanced in politics, and he's been a strong voice for the folks in Fort Alberni and on the West Coast in a significant way. So I want to welcome all the different voices who are here and say that this is, at its essence, what democracy and what government should be all about. Engaging with people, listening to people, and moving forward in... I think I've been polite. I think I've been patient. I think I've been respectful. Have I been respectful towards you? No, sir. You don't get a microphone. You've used up your time. You've used up your time, and other people will get time. Everyone will get other time. Sir, I have listened. We have all listened. We I think, are moving forward. What do you guys think? Should I give this guy a microphone? Okay. The crowd has spoken. You don't get a microphone. Thank you, sir. So I'll take a question from over here. You, sir, go ahead. Right here.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We're very proud to have you here with us. I know you love the West Coast. I know you love Tofino. But one of the issues that I would like to address today, if you could, is your housing strategy. And I know that you're committed to it. I think it's perhaps better if it was started sooner than after 2019. I also like to bring in land claims issue and housing for First Nations. Qualicum Beach has land, has crown land inside our town boundaries that we could use for land claims and work with them as developers. So I would consider housing issues and the issue with land claims. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. I'm very proud of the national housing strategy we've put forward because for the first time in a long time, the federal government is actually re-engaged in housing. It's something that we know the federal government used to be involved in and hadn't in a while. So when we put forward about, depending on how you calculate it, 11 or $15 billion over the coming years into housing, we know that that's going to make a huge difference. And there's a number of things that we're doing concretely. Here in the Nanaimo Ladysmith riding, we're talking about $500,000 directly towards an ending homelessness strategy that is tangibly moving forward. But you're right, there are elements of the national housing strategy that will not kick in until a couple of years from now, and that is because there is a lot of work to do to get to where we need to be. We have worked with community leaders, with municipal leaders, with broad partners across the board to look at how we can be investing in new rental units, in new constructions and restoration of old units, but also looking at transferring, as you said, federal lands to municipal responsibility to be able to create more affordable housing, because that is a big path forward, and we will continue with that. So thank you very much for your question. I look forward to the partnerships. Thank you. Maybe a question from the back area there. You, sir. Yes, in the black.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Chief Councillor Greg Louie, representing the House at New Channel Territory. And while I'm speaking, I hope those two across me can be quiet so the Prime Minister and everybody else can listen to me and the answer I'm expecting. Please, be quiet. Be quiet. Please, don't wave at me. Please, be quiet. Be quiet. Question, Mr. Prime Minister. Question, Mr. Prime Minister. Yes, thank you for acknowledge Gord John and the fishing that he does, that you do with him. This is leads into my question, Mr. Prime Minister. As you and the Minister of Justice know, there's a court case going on with the Takwiak court case, and House It is some know it as the House It case. And I would like to know, Mr. Prime Minister, when your cabinet will make a decision, a final decision with regards to the Takwiak court case, and also just a little history. The court case, the Five Nations this was passed federally 8-9 years ago now, and still the fishing rights to the House It and the West Coast people there's still far too many limitations to what they can and cannot do, Mr. Prime Minister, and just would like to know when your cabinet will make a decision with the Takwiak court case. And thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for your time.
No, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. And also thank you for the patience. I know these are issues that have gone on far too long. You mentioned the 8 or 9 years, but really these are issues that go back decades and even generations, and it is time we move forward on them. I know there is expectation that the court case is going to come down within weeks even, and it's something that I can tell you even ahead of that, the verdict and the decisions on the court case. We have had many discussions with our Minister of Justice, with the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, in a way that we can move forward in partnership, in respect that is both respectful of science and evidence, is respectful of traditional knowledge, traditional practices, traditional territory, and the best way we can move forward in a way that is to the spirit of the nation-to-nation respectful relationship. There are no easy answers on this. This is something that we have to work through together, but it is something that we will, I pledge to you, sit down, work with you, listen to your concerns, and figure out what is the right path forward for your community and for everyone. We have made significant changes in process, in relationship over the past 2 years. There are folks who are impatient. I'm impatient, you're impatient. We know we need to get this done. We also know we need to get it right, and that's exactly what we will do. Thank you for bringing it up, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Question over here. You, miss. Yes. I look forward to getting a question on that eventually, but right now I'm getting a question from this woman. Please.
Hello, I am Shabnam. My great pleasure to be here. Today, we know that Canada is well known as the leader of peace in the world and has a loud voice in the United Nations. I'm just wondering what is the Canadian government plan to support Baha'is in Iran, who even don't have any right in their own country, and also, according to the current situation in Iran, we are worried about them, especially Baha'i leaders who have been in prison for 10 years just because of their beliefs, which is the unity of mankind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The persecution of people of the Baha'i faith has been well documented and well known for many, many years. It is something that Canada has been able to show leadership on in the past. We've welcomed many members of the Baha'i faith, the Iranian community, to Canada, but we've also had in various eras positive engagement with the Iranian governments, with the Iranian authorities, to try and move forward the framework around respect for religious minorities. Obviously, in Iran, under this current regime, it's extremely difficult. A number of years ago, primarily for security reasons, but for a few other reasons as well, Canada shut down its embassy in Tehran. We are looking at carefully re-engaging with Iran in constructive ways, but their state sponsorship of terrorism, their persecution of religious minorities, including, of course, the Baha'i, but not just the Baha'i, is an issue that we have a lot of trouble with. So we're going to continue to work to try and impress upon places like Iran, but places around the world, the need to be respectful and peaceful, the need to move forward in respect of human rights. Canada is not the country that can do that with the might of our armies or the economic hegemony we have, because we're a middle power, but we are respected for our voices, and we are using it in a thoughtful, engaged way in multilateral institutions and with countries around the world, and we're very much hopeful that we're moving forward in the right direction on that. So thank you for bringing up that story. Thank you. Thank you. You, sir, in the black t-shirt.
Thank you. What should we as Canadian citizens do about the tension in the Korean Peninsula?
It's a great question. This is an issue that we struggle with, that as we look across the Pacific to the Korean Peninsula and the dangerous actions of the North Korean regime, we are all obviously worried. It's a question of regional security and stability, but it's a question of global security and stability as well. Canada has been active, including here with a conference in Vancouver a number of weeks ago, pulling together international actors, various states that were involved in sending troops to the Korean Peninsula during the Korean War to try and move forward on diplomatic and political pressures that continue against the regime in Pyongyang, because what they're doing is a threat not just to us, but to all of us. Canada has always consistently been a voice pushing for sanctions, pushing for dialogue with regional partners like China and Russia, understanding that we all have a role to play in this, and if Canada can play a role as convener in finding other solutions than military solutions, which some people seem more enthusiastic about than others, I think we'll be on the right track. What can ordinary people do? Continue to stay informed, continue to engage and hope that we're going to move forward towards peace. Stay interested, keep talking to your elected officials about your concerns, and ensure that we continue to be a consistent voice for peace. Thank you very much. Yes, Jane. You, ma'am. Yes.
Hey, my handsome, precious one, how are you?
I'm better now. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I voted for you, and one of the reasons I voted for you was because of that damn pipeline they want to put through our province. And you said, I was born there, I don't see the point of that. And I thought, oh, yay, he's on our side. And so I voted for you, and I was so upset when you approved it. And those tankers, those oil tankers, if they were to ever have a crash on our coastline, it would destroy our coastline. And my son-in-law is a captain. My son-in-law is a yacht captain, and he repairs all those yachts. And he told me we have some really, really dangerous areas on our coastline here. And if you remember, many, many, many years ago, there was an oil tanker that crashed on our west coastline. And look how long it took them to get that damn oil out of the water, and how it killed so much of our wildlife. We need to protect our wildlife, and we need to protect our coastline. So please, please, oh, please, please.
I think I'm okay. I think it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Please, don't approve this.
Thank you. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your passion, and thank you for your sweet support. I will mildly correct the record on this, in that I talked about extensively, and I still talk about how much I love and respect the BC coast, how much I spent times growing up here, loving and understanding how important it is to protect this coast. I also demonstrated throughout the election campaign, throughout my time as government, that I understand something that most Canadians understand, which is you can no longer make a choice between good for the environment and good for the economy. We have to do them both together. That is something, and I think there are folks here demonstrating my point that some people still think there is a choice to be made, either environment or economy. But most Canadians understand that we need to build both a stronger economy in sustainable ways while protecting the environment at the same time. That's actually something that the previous government, the previous government didn't get and didn't do a very good job of. I think we can all agree on that, that for 10 years they didn't move forward on the environment. They didn't do much to protect our natural environment or invest in the kinds of renewable energies or move forward in fighting climate change the way we would want to. And actually, as a result, they weren't very good at creating the kind of growing economy that we know we need to have. So the commitment that I made in the election was that we were going to protect BC coasts. So we were going to bring in the moratorium on the tankers on the off the north coast. We were going to move forward in a responsible way that didn't jeopardize our natural environment and the livelihood of future generations. So one of the things we did right off the bat is we realized that the Northern Gateway Pipeline was not a good pipeline to move forward. It was not something that we could protect the North Coast from. That the Great Bear Rainforest is no place for a crude oil pipeline. That the Douglas Channel was no place for the kinds of super tankers it would have bring. So we said no to the Northern Gateway Pipeline, even though I point out there was a few Indigenous communities that were disappointed because they wanted that Northern Gateway Pipeline to go in. There were many others who said no, and we moved forward and canceled the Northern Gateway Pipeline. On the Kinder Morgan Pipeline, we applied the same sort of thinking and combined it with a reflection that the world needs and Canada needs to reduce our carbon emissions. Sorry. See, the thing is, you have folks who have all the answers, who are not interested even in hearing the reflections that led their government to do what it did. So we were welcomed here by the chief to exchange, to have an open, respectful dialogue, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Chief Wise welcomed you all onto his people's traditional territory and asked for a conversation based on respect and listening, because that's the kind of relationship we've had.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I thank everybody for their passion and their concern. Very duly noted. Once again, I would love to ask each and every one of you to respect each other's comments, concerns that they have to bring forward today, so we can all engage in respectful dialogue. That's what we're here for. So I'd really ask you graciously. So if we'd love to carry on this discussion, and if we would can't carry on, we'd love people to please excuse themselves and let us carry on this discussion. Heights up here with Jim.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. Yes, thank you. Again? Okay. Again. But I am trying to engage with you. I am trying to speak with you. I'm trying to answer a question from someone who asked me a question that is extremely important to her, and I'm not able to answer her question that she asked of the Prime Minister because you think your voice is more important than her ability to listen. That's not very polite. And the Chief just asked for a little respect as well. The Chief just asked you to be a little more respectful. Are you going to say no to him? Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. You know what? See, I have spent the past number of weeks crisscrossing the country, doing town halls across the country, and having excellent conversations, difficult at times, where people have brought forward issues that were very important to them. There was a fellow who asked about ALS medication in an extremely poignant exchange in my very first town hall, and him asking about that had us follow up on that, and we were able to give him help and clarity a few days later because of that and move the issues along. This is an opportunity for me to hear concerns that people have. Trust me, I know what your concerns are. I've heard your concerns. You've been telling them to me since the very beginning. I am now asking for, on behalf of everyone else, to be able to answer their concerns, because there's a room filled with people who do have questions for me. And if you could have a little respect for them, not me, you don't have to respect me. You can not vote for me next time, that's no problem. But you don't respect anyone in this room? Then I'm going to have to ask you to leave this room. If you don't respect the people in this room, please leave this room. Thank you. Good. Usually it's not that easy. Usually it's harder to get them to admit they don't respect anyone in this room, but that sort of made it fairly easy. I apologize for that. I apologize for the interaction. We'll have to stretch out the time a little more because I don't want you all to be penalized for that. Let me just quickly try and finish my thought in answering the very real question there. We committed to move forward, not just with carbon reduction targets, but with an actual plan to reduce our carbon emissions. And what we were able to do was bring in a national price on carbon right across the country that all provinces are going to be subject to. We are going to meet our Paris commitments on reducing carbon emissions in this country, and that is good news for all of us. But when we do that, we have to at the same time understand that that will impact different parts of the country differently, and being able to move forward on that plan, being able to say we are putting an absolute cap on oil sands emissions, which is part of the Alberta carbon reduction plan. In order to do that, there's two other pieces of it. We had to make sure, as I've said, that we are investing in historic world-class oceans protection, and that's exactly what we've done. What we're moving forward with on the Oceans Protection Plan here on the BC coast is the world-class and is representing well over $1 billion invested that is going to make sure that we do a better job of protecting our coast, and we will be able to. The other part of that, come on, come on. Really? Really? Okay, this is it. Will you please respect the people in this room? Will you please respect the people in this room? Will you please respect the people in this room? No, then please leave. If you're not going to respect the people in this room, you need to leave. That's the rule. Sorry. Go ahead. Goodbye. Thank you for coming. If you can't respect the people in this room, you need to leave. No. Are you going to stay? Oh, no, well, you're still here? Okay, well then. Okay, we've been doing this for 25 minutes now, and I've gotten to 2 questions, or 3 questions. That's not fair. I'm working my way around the room. If you guys sit down and behave until I get to you, I will give you the mic. How's that? It's not for me. Okay. Show of hands. Who thinks it's time for these people to leave? Okay. Thank you. Please go. Yes, we're going to ask the police to remove you. Yes, we're asking the police to remove you both. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think I gave you a few chances. Sorry. No, it's time to go. Please remove her. Winston Churchill pointed out that democracy is messy, and it is messy, but it's the best possible form of engagement because we do get to hear from everyone in this. Thank you, and I apologize for for the behavior of our fellow citizens. Okay, we're going to try answering the pipeline question, which I know a whole bunch of people wanted me to answer. One more time, I'll try and do it very quickly. We brought in a national carbon reduction plan, a national emissions plan that's going to allow us to reach our climate goals, to reach our Paris commitments. But in order to do that, part of moving forward is approving the Kinder Morgan pipeline, which will be able to get our resources responsibly and safely to new markets across the Pacific. It is something that some people, many people feel very strongly about on either side, but that is the nature of the compromise we had to make in the best interests of Canada. To grow the economy, to protect the environment at the same time, we have to make tough decisions. That's exactly what I did. It is in the national interest to move forward with the Kinder Morgan pipeline, and we will be moving forward with the Kinder Morgan pipeline. But as I said, we will be protecting the BC coast at the same time. Thank you very much. Next question. Question over from that section. Yes, the young lady in the white poncho there. Yes.
Welcome, Prime Minister Trudeau. I'd first like to acknowledge that we are here on Sanemo traditional territory. Haitchka mai Sanemo friends. In my culture, Thai, Sawadee Ka. Prime Minister Trudeau, I'm really worried about the politics in the United States and Canada. I am seeing racism, discrimination, and bullying. This is happening here too. I know what I am doing to make this country a better place. What are you doing?
Oh, man. It's a moment like this that make me know that our future is in great hands. Thank you. Thank you for your engagement, for your question. Canada is a country that we have worked very, very, very hard over generations and centuries to build. And we have made lots of mistakes along the way. The biggest and greatest of them is in the systemic mistreatment, marginalization, and breaking of promises to Indigenous peoples who welcomed the first settlers onto this land. But on top of that, we've had troubles with systemic racism and discrimination over generations, and we need to move forward. And quite frankly, as we look at the country we are, we're actually doing a pretty good job, not perfect by any means, a pretty good job of demonstrating that differences, that diversity, where it's conflict generating in parts of the world, is actually a source of strength for us. We learn that resilience and understanding comes through learning of different perspectives and listening to. So we do a good job of it, but there's still a lot more to do. There's been an increasing strain of Islamophobia and racism in our country these days, anti-immigrant sentiment that's creeping up. It's still not mainstream by any sense, but the strength of this country has been people arriving from all different parts of the world and learning to live together in respect and cooperation and collaboration, and that is something we need to protect and maintain. And that happens through listening to each other, through respecting each other, through learning from each other. So what I am trying to foster as a culture of politics, and a lot of people will point out that it's not perfect because nobody is, and there's still a lot more work to do, is a climate in which we can have reasonable discussions and differences of opinion, but still enjoy our presence here in conversation about how we best move forward. People will have different perspectives, different priorities, different outlooks on life, but the more we learn from each other, the more we figure out together how best to move forward, the better our politics, our country, our world will be. So I want to thank you. What is your name and how old are you?
Sumali, that's my name, and I'm 8 years old.
Well, I have an 8-year-old daughter at home named Ella Grace, whose birthday is in 3 days. And if she ever asked me a question as deep and thoughtful as you just did, I would be incredibly proud as a parent. So, there's a community doing a very good job at raising you. Thank you. And one of the ways we can ensure that we are working to build a better world is to think about how each of us individually in our daily actions, in our engagement with others, reach out to each other to understand each other, understand our impact on community, on the world around us. It's something that I'm certainly trying to do, but it's something I need a lot of help with, and all of you being here today is a great sign in that direction. Thank you very much, Sumali. Thank you. You in the front row.
We need a mic. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to do it or me? Okay. Hi, I really appreciate you coming out today. On December the 19th, 2017, the UN resolution declared September the 23rd as International Day of Sign Language. That was officially adopted at the 72nd United Nations General Assembly. Canada is one of the countries listed as an additional sponsor to the UN resolution. I wanted to say thank you for the Government of Canada for your support as a deaf Canadian. Currently, there are barriers in Canada related to accessibility around the country, and I understand that the federal government is planning to introduce the federal accessibility legislation this year to remove those barriers that we face in our country. The recognition of sign languages is a key element of human rights related to deaf persons, clearly outlined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, also known as CRPD. That is also the Canadian Association of Deaf Canadians. Sorry, pardon me. There is also the Association du Canada, pardon me, for pushing sign language recognition. My question is to you, will your government plan to recognize our two national sign languages, American Sign Language and Language Signed to Quebec, to join many countries around the world that have legally recognized their sign languages? Thank you, and I look forward to your response.
Thank you very much for your question. It's a pleasure to be able to talk about this issue because it's one that matters deeply to me. The accessibility and the opportunity to succeed, to participate fully in society of every single citizen is something that we have to put at the forefront of the kind of world that we build, the kind of country we build. So we are, as you say, moving forward with accessibility legislation. It started with a Disability Act, and we realized that that's not the word we wanted to use. We're looking at accessibility. Now we're looking at a barrier-free Canada. Our government is working on that. I know there has been discussion about recognition of sign languages as a part of that. I don't know where the latest deliberations are, but I will certainly look at that and make sure that we're doing the right thing as we move forward on that. Thank you very much for your question today. Thank you. Okay, a question from the back here. You in the dark royal blue shirt. Yes. No, sorry, ma'am, forward. Yes, the woman in the last row of the front seat, of the front section, on the floor. Sorry.
Merci, je suis très honorée d'être ici aujourd'hui avec vous. Ma question concerne l'éducation en français dans les communautés où le français est une langue minoritaire, comme la Colombie-Britannique. Mes enfants sont dans le programme francophone à Nanaimo, mais quand elles arrivent au secondaire, sur 8 cours, il n'y en a plus que 2 en français. Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez faire pour assurer que leurs droits linguistiques soient respectés?
Merci beaucoup pour la question. Je suis très content de souligner. I'm happy to highlight that there is simultaneous translation here, so I'm happy to answer in the official language in which it was spoken, but I will, for those of you who didn't get headsets, quickly summarize in English afterwards. D'abord, je comprends à quel point les communautés minoritaires en situation... linguistiques en situation minoritaire à travers le pays sont essentielles, pas seulement pour leur communauté, mais pour le Canada que nous sommes. Si on est un pays qui est ouvert aux autres, c'est parce que dès les débuts, on avait deux identités linguistiques qui devaient s'accepter et comprendre qu'ils étaient informés par les Premières Nations qui étaient ici depuis toujours. La façon qu'on va continuer de protéger ces langues en situation minoritaire, c'est d'assurer l'investissement en éducation, dans les programmes sociaux, dans les centres communautaires et de contrer l'assimilation qui trop facilement arrive. J'ai moi-même été enseignant de français pendant plusieurs années dans l'Ouest, à Vancouver, et je sais à quel point c'est difficile d'appuyer cette communauté. Nous avons, dans les prochains mois, notre prochaine feuille de route sur les langues officielles qui va sortir, et vous allez voir que après 10 ans de sous-investissement par l'ancien gouvernement, nous allons avancer pour vraiment vous appuyer, pour défendre nos belles langues officielles partout au pays, et j'ai bien hâte de pouvoir travailler avec vous. Merci. Quickly, I just pointed out the importance of our official languages right across the country, not just for the communities who are in minority official language situations, but for all of us. If we're a country that has learned to respect differences, it comes from the very beginning where we had incompatible identities, at least over in Europe, English and French, living side by side, where we had to learn to draw on each other. Of course, we were deeply informed by the Indigenous peoples who welcomed us here, who had very open definitions of identity and acceptance that impinged upon or influenced our thinking, but that linguistic and cultural duality from the very beginning is a building block that led to the successful multiculturalism and the values-based identity that we have right now. So I pointed out that in the coming months we will be putting forward our updated official languages strategy, because we know that how we protect our official languages across this country is core to how we continue to exist as this extraordinary, diverse and distinct country that we are. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Question from the back section. You, sir, in the blue shirt. Yes. Dark blue. Dark blue. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for taking the time to come and speak to us and take questions. I really appreciate that. It's a breath of fresh air from the last Prime Minister we had.
Low bar.
My question is about NAFTA and trade agreements. I first want to say that I'm really disappointed in your decision about electoral reform, and I'm really disappointed in your decision about Site C. And I'm also very disappointed in your decision about Kinder Morgan. In the NAFTA negotiations, we know that the Trump administration has said that they would like to make Chapter 11 voluntary. Chapter 11 allows corporations to sue governments for laws and policies that get in the way of their profitability. We have a case where Bilcon, a quarry company, lost an environmental assessment and went to NAFTA, and now they want $300 to $500 million for the loss of potential profit for a quarry that they couldn't dig. That's $10 or $15 for every person in this room. We have Lone Pine Resources, which is suing for $250 million because they want to frack in the St. Lawrence Basin, and the government of Quebec doesn't want fracking in an area that will affect the water supply for 4 or 5 million people. Why do you support Chapter 11, and why is your government fighting to keep investor-state dispute settlement in NAFTA when we could get rid of it with the Trump administration? I do not want to be paying out billions of dollars to Kinder Morgan after we tell them that we cannot have their pipeline coming to BC, because we're going to stop it.
Okay. On the NAFTA angle, what you're talking about is Chapter 11 is also known as investor-state dispute resolution mechanisms. And ISDS was actually at the heart of our discussions around with the European Union on the free trade deal that we successfully concluded with them. And one of the moves we chose to make, and we had to make in order to actually be able to conclude that deal, is to change the model around investor-state dispute mechanisms so that a government could not be penalized or sued for protecting the environment, for protecting labor rights, for protecting citizens' interests against corporate interests. That's something that the Europeans were willing to do with us, and we're very pleased that we've actually set forward a model that we hope will be the new standard for trade deals that does recognize that protection of citizens' rights needs to be at the forefront of trade deals, not protecting corporate or multinational rights. That's what we talk about when we talk about progressive trade deals. When we talk about wanting to bring in elements like a gender lens on NAFTA, bring in labor codes on NAFTA, bring in more progressive elements, it's because we've had enough of trade deals that benefit the 1%, that benefit big businesses, that benefits the countries, but don't benefit the workers and the citizens. And that's what we're trying to change. That's what we've been pushing on. That's what we successfully concluded with NAFTA. That's what we've been moving forward, for example, in concluding a gender chapter in our free trade agreement with Chile. That's what we were pushing on for the CPTPP, and we got significant movement forward on these issues. On NAFTA, the negotiations are complex and challenging. And there are a lot of elements that are tied to other elements. We are pushing in a responsible way for the best possible deal for Canada. I've said many times, we are not going to take any old deal. Canada is willing to walk away from NAFTA if the United States propose us a bad deal. We will not be pushed around, and at the same time, we can remain confident about NAFTA because regardless of perceptions in the United States, NAFTA has been really good for the US, it's been good for workers, it's been good in Canada, and canceling it would be extremely harmful and disruptive to people in the United States as it would be in Canada. So we're going to keep negotiating in good faith, fighting for the kinds of things you absolutely talked about, and we are confident we're going to be able to get to the right deal for Canada, not just any deal. Thank you. Another question. You in the blue t-shirt. Yes.
Hi, Mr. Prime Minister. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your time and for visiting our school. So you went over your reasoning for passing Kinder Morgan, but what's the plan for when there is an oil spill?
Well, first of all, the decision on moving forward on Kinder Morgan versus Northern Gateway is Kinder Morgan arrives in a well-serviced, busy port that actually has a capacity to deal with incidents and challenges. At the same time, we've set forward significant numbers of conditions that are going to have to be met by the proponent as we move forward. We know that building a strong economy and protecting the environment need to go together, and it's a combination of technological and regulatory challenges that are going to protect us. We've also invested over $1 billion in upgrading our protections for the oceans, and that's something we're moving forward on a science basis. We know that we have to reduce our carbon emissions. We know we need a pan-Canadian plan on climate change. We got that that framework and that pan-Canadian plan on climate change because we were willing to move forward and demonstrate that at the same time we can continue with developing our resources in safe and secure ways. And that's what we're going to continue to do. Thank you for your question. Thank you for the respectful way you asked it as well. Okay, question in the back. You, ma'am, in the front, in the black. Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, well. I am from Colombia, but I am also, could you please record me? But I am also Canadian, as I feel very proud. I feel very proud because when I arrived here, I didn't speak any English, so I had the opportunity to go to a school and speak English. Hope everybody understands me. I am here because we moved 1.5 years from Vancouver, and I have the opportunity to get married with a very handsome man from Canada, like you, Prime Minister. No worry. And also, before I ask my question, I would like to say to you that I feel very, very proud of your passion with all the people that have done here to ask questions, but some doesn't listen. So I really feel very proud for your passion, because passion is a virtue. I don't remember if I say my name. My name is Lucy Lopez. And my question, my husband just sent to me because unfortunately he couldn't make it. So my question is this one. We just moved to Nanaimo because we could not afford houses in Vancouver. Now we need decent living wage jobs to have a decent quality of life here in Nanaimo. What federal projects are lined up to create these jobs on Vancouver Island, but specifically in Nanaimo, sorry?
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, we're moving forward with a pan-Canadian housing strategy, a national housing strategy that is going to make sure that there is new construction, new rental construction, new opportunities to alleviate the kinds of pressure both on affordable housing and housing affordability. This is something that continues to cause challenges. So hopefully there will certainly be positive impacts on you and your family in terms of that, in terms of being able to afford your homes here. But on economic growth and how we're going to support the creation of good jobs, there's a whole bunch of things that we've had to do and that we're working on doing. The first one is to recognize that it's not the government that creates economic growth. It's Canadians who create economic growth. And the decision we took early on, actually, in our platform and delivered on it in the mandate, is to lower taxes on the middle class, raise them on the wealthiest 1%, to put a little more money in the pockets of those who need it. On top of that, we're delivering a Canada Child benefit that I'm sure you're getting, that 9 out of 10 families get across the country, that is reducing child poverty by 40% across the country and making a real difference every single month with a significant check tax-free in their pockets. What that's leading to is not just help for the families, but it's leading to more confidence within our communities, within our country, and that leads to more investment, that leads to more economic activity, and that's one of the reasons why we have the lowest unemployment rate universally across the country in over 40 years, and the fastest growing economy in the G7. It's not the government that did that, it's Canadians who have done that with their confidence, with their investment, with their innovation. Because that's the other piece of it, investing in infrastructure like public transit and housing, but also investing in innovation, like extraordinary research that goes on here at Vancouver Island University and institutions and research laboratories right across the country. We know that recognizing the need for investments in science and knowledge and research is going to be essential in a world that is more automated, more filled with AI and technology and disrupted workplace. We are investing in people being able to access the tools they're going to need to be successful in the coming years, and we're going to continue to do that. So we're going to keep the economy growing by focusing on giving the tools to people to be successful, and a big part of that, of course, is ensuring that we close the gender wage gap, bring in pay equity, bring forward opportunities for promotion and advancement, better child supports and family supports, to make sure that everyone can fully participate in growing the economy the way we need to. Thank you very much. Gracias. Question, you, sir, on the far right in the gray. Yes.
Hello. I'd like to thank you for coming to VIU today, my school. And I've got a question. It's been my first year here. I've learned about residential schools here. I've never learned about them in elementary school or high school. And part of what I've learned is that they didn't do anything beneficial. And what are you going to do to make sure that people know about residential schools?
Yes. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission delivered 94 calls to action when it ended its work a couple of years ago. And we have taken on the responsibility for making sure all of those are implemented. Some of them are not directly the federal level that can do that. You know, getting the Vatican to apologize, for example, there's no bill I can pass to make that happen, but I've had conversations with the Pope about moving forward on that one, and we're optimistic about that. Other issues are slightly more provincial. We know K-12 education is a provincial jurisdiction. I was a teacher here in BC for many years, so I know how the BC Ministry of Education controls its curriculum, but I also know that it is something that is understood across the country and the federal government is providing support for to ensure that there are courses properly teaching and understanding residential schools as a historical shame, but also as something that has created a legacy of intergenerational trauma that exists to this day that we have to do a better job of supporting and working through. One of the more recent articulations of the same kinds of errors that led to residential schools is the amount of Indigenous children across the country in child and family services and foster care. That is something that we absolutely have to deal with in a concrete way, and I was pleased that our Minister of Indigenous Services, Jane Philpott, is moving forward with on addressing the issue of kids in care. More awareness about it is absolutely important, and I'm really pleased actually that people get that reconciliation is not just about government and Indigenous peoples, it's about non-Indigenous Canadians as well. We all have a role to play, and I want to thank you all for the role you play and for your question. Thank you. Question. You, sir. It's coming right to you.
Thank you. Why is your Minister of Fisheries, Dominique Leblanc, fighting in court to make it legal to put piscine reovirus-infected farm salmon into fish farms along the BC coast when the laws of Canada prohibit this and the federal court already ruled against this behavior?
Thank you for your question. We know that the question of fish farms is an extremely important one. I want to thank everyone who's come out and brought it up as well, and I'm pleased that we're able to answer it right now. First of all, this morning we made an announcement out of Ottawa. Our chief science advisor, that was a position that we brought in just a number of months ago after the previous government eliminated that position, it has just announced the creation of a scientific panel to dig into the science, the data, the proper understanding of how we move forward that will also fold in traditional knowledges and Indigenous experience. We know we have to settle the question of, fix the question of fish farms. There is real concerns in Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities amongst Canadians about how we're moving forward on this and what the future of fish farms actually look like. That's why we're taking it very seriously, and we are moving forward on looking at the best way to continue with aquaculture in a way that is safe for the environment, for the ecosystem, and for Canadians. Thank you very much. And that's certainly something we're looking at, yes. Good. Another question. You, sir, in the suit and tie.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau, for being here today and speaking to all of us, even though I know a lot of people are heartbroken about Kinder Morgan right now. But you're doing a very good job of answering the questions. So I'm going to ask one that you probably don't get asked every day. My name is Jordan Reichert. I'm the West Coast Campaign Officer of the Animal Protection Party of Canada. So the Liberal government in 2016 killed a bill called Bill C-246, which was the Modernizing Animal Protections Act, which would have made marginal improvements for the protection of animals in our country by eliminating the importation of cat and dog fur, eliminating the importation of shark fins, removing animals from the property section of the criminal code, and various other changes. Now, the Liberal Party voted against this bill. Across Canada, over 1 billion animals are killed through factory farming, animal experimentation. We're the only G7 country without protection for animals in laboratories right now. Systemic violence against animals is, well, violence is systemic against animals in our country. Every day, animals are being abused on farms, in factory situations, in laboratories, in our homes, and the Canadian government, the Liberal government, has done nothing to take action. In fact, they have killed action on this issue. And so, while this room is full of people and there are no animals here, all the animals of Canada have a question for you, and that is, what is the Liberal government going to do to protect them? It is 2018, but we're still treating animals like it's 1918.
Okay, thank you for your question. Of course, everyone in Canada wants to make sure we're protecting animals, making sure that we are not abusing or exploiting or doing things that aren't consistent with our values and our approach. The challenge, and you actually highlighted it in what you said, the challenge is this debate has been set up as a polarizing one between animal rights activists and farmers. That debate between primarily urban, I'm not going to call you out here, but suit and tie wearing activists, thank you for dressing up for this, it's an important thing. But that debate between urban and rural is one of those lines where animal rights ends up getting pulled at. And my recommendation for animal rights activists is to actually work closer with farm groups and rural groups who are also concerned about animal rights and very open to moving forward on respectful practices, but are very much worried and see it as an attack on them. Work with them to try and find a path forward that will be acceptable to all Canadians, because we agree on the values. We all agree that no, we shouldn't be importing cats and dog fur, we shouldn't be doing terrible things like this, and we know we need to move forward, but as long as it is set up as a conflict between urban and rural, it's going to be something that won't get to the desired outcome that you and so many people want. So if you can make sure to fold in rural and agricultural concerns into your way forward, I think we could find very strong consensus around the path forward. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you. You, yes.
Hi, Justin. Thank you so much for coming today. So today you're implying the values morality test to the Canada Summer Job Grants. Tomorrow, what are you going to imply it to? Will there be other checkboxes in the future? Why are you imposing a values morality test to decide who the government helps or not? Will this happen with other things? I want to grow up and live in a country where values aren't imposed to us by the government.
Thank you very much. I want to grow up in a country where values aren't imposed by the government too, and that's what we have and that's what we protect. Let me be very, very clear about a lot of the disinformation and the sort of the politicization that has gone on around the Canada Summer Jobs Program. Faith groups, churches, religious organizations are essential in the strength of our community fabric. They run summer camps, they run programs for kids, they help the needy, and they provide soup kitchens. They do incredibly good and important work in our communities, and the more we can get students who need summer jobs to have positive experiences in helping their communities through faith groups and others, the better our country will be. We need faith organizations to continue to draw and give great experiences to students across this country as they work and develop themselves in the summer. However, organizations that have the explicit and stated mandate and purpose to fight against rights that have been established in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, like the rights of women to control their reproductive health, and the rights of LGBT communities to be part of our society in full, will not get government funding. There is nothing about this that goes to beliefs or values. That ticking off the box says is the core mandate of the organization, the activities that organization is doing, is it to be, for example, distributing flyers of aborted fetuses through mailboxes across this country to try and roll back the clock on women's rights. If you have an organization that wants to do that, you can do that. Just don't expect the government to give you funding to put kids to work doing that. This is not a question of values or belief. This is a question of being consistent that we will always, as a government, as a country, stand up for hard-won rights for women, for the LGBTQ2 communities, and for marginalized communities that need the protection of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, as we all do. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to clarify that. Thank you. Yes. Here.
Hello, Prime Minister Trudeau. Thank you for making time to come to the West Coast here. My name is Chastity Davis. I'm a mixed heritage woman from Claw-Emmen, and I'm English and Ukrainian on my father's side. And I also chair the Minister's Advisory Council on Indigenous Women here in the province. I wanted to ask you a question that you had sort of talked about already about the children in care, our Indigenous children in care. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to say that there are more Indigenous children in care right now in this country than the entire amount of generations of Indigenous children that went to residential school. So how does that land for everybody here, right? So I would really like to hear if there's an urgency for you as a feminist, and hopefully you're an Indigenous feminist as well, Prime Minister, what your government is going to do about that. And I know that you said that Jane Philpott was looking into that, but I would really like to hear so that from 20 years from now, we're not having another 94 calls to action. And it's our responsibility as current Canadians to be dealing with these issues. And so I really would love to hear about what you are doing about our children in care and how you're supporting our Indigenous mothers to bring our children home.
Yes, no, thank you. First of all, recognizing that the federal government has responsibility and jurisdiction when it comes to Indigenous issues, but recognizing that Child and Family Services are provincial organizations means we have to work together on this, and that's something that we've absolutely engaged with on that. The Minister Philpott has regular conversations with her counterparts, and we've actually made an announcement just last week about how we're going to be moving forward and getting to the right path on this. First of all, there are far too many kids, as you say, being taken from their families and put into foster homes where the education they get, the experiences they have are in far too many cases, extremely harmful and negative, not to mention it's often a path towards losing one's sense of identity, culture, language, which we know was the greatest sin of residential schools, or one of the greatest sins of residential schools, that delegitimizing of identity, language, and culture. Interestingly enough, we know that suicide rates in Indigenous communities are far greater than in non-Indigenous communities. But if you dig down and look at communities where there is a much better job and much more capacity to teach language and culture and traditional practices and connect young people with their history, the suicide rates, just as a symptom of it, plummet down to where the rest of the world is, or the rest of Canada is. So we know that language and culture and traditional knowledge are essential in getting there. One of the legacies of residential schools, however, is that there are far too many parents themselves who didn't have much of a childhood and don't have the tools to be able to pass on that language to those kids. And that's where we need to be supporting them instead of taking the kids away. And that's all part of the reconciliation journey we are on, of trying to make sure that we are giving Indigenous communities themselves control over their kids' education, over what happens to their kids when they're in families dealing with situations of abuse or addiction or dysfunction in various ways. So we can actually have a system by Indigenous communities, for Indigenous communities, that gives the support necessary to give every kid a brighter future. It's something that we take extraordinarily seriously. Not just because it's the future of Indigenous communities at stake, but because of the number of young people in Indigenous communities across this country. If we don't get this right, it's going to have a negative impact on our entire country. So I thank you for bringing it up. It's something that I am extraordinarily passionate about and taken up with, and it's something we're working on together. Thank you. Question. You, sir, in the gray shirt. Yes, no, you're right there. Yes. There you go. You got a mic right beside you.
Thank you. I campaigned for your dad 50 or so years ago. It's pretty hard facing a prime minister who my wife has pantyhose who are older than that. Than you are.
I'm sure your wife didn't want us to tell us that.
I'm going to get it in the neck, I'll tell you. I'm the father of an Indigenous child. We put out for adoption when we weren't able to have children. We asked for a boy or a girl, pretty normal choice at the time. Any race, racial mix, and the odds were we have a beautiful son who's from the Gitxsan Nation. We have united with his family. He has two mothers. He has learned the ways that he didn't learn at Oak Bay High School, so he's got his own moose. He's canned tons of salmon. And he's seen the world as a flight attendant with Air Canada. But that's not my point. My point is that the parents of people who do have Native kids can do a lot. They can be the bridge that takes you back. My sister, son's mother, aunt, whatever you want to call her, she was taken off to residential school 1,000 kilometers away when she was 8 years old. She can't even speak about it. She's a loving, hardworking person. Abby Wright, she's out there, she'll hear about this. And we are one big family. So families are who you choose as well. And I have friends who, my age, I'm in my 70s, mid-70s. I remember riding the train to Squamish with your granddad,
Jimmy Sinclair.
And he said, I got a grandson about your son's age, and my son was there. My son is 42, not quite as old as you. But anyway, I'm just glad you came out. I'm also one of the people whose heart is aching for Kinder Morgan. In your legitimate and appreciated concern for women, the Me Too, the abuse and things, I always feel at my age that the rape culture, we'll call it, comes from power, money, And when we inflict it on people, we also inflict it, a lot of what happens to our environment. Our Mother Earth is being abused too, big time. So I just like you to, in your broad sensitivity, to include her, because she deserves it, and it will all come back on us, so that if we're damaged in one way or another, and I do give a special shout out to many of the Aboriginal folk I know, because they're the cultural canary in our cultural mine. And they haven't been quite as wrecked as we are in some ways. Other ways they've been wrecked way more than we would ever be able to stand. But thank you for being here, and best of luck.
Thank you. Now do you guys see why I love doing town halls? You know, thank you, sir, for sharing your story. I am honored that I get to serve a country in which you are a citizen. Yeah, give him back the mic. He's earned it for sure.
I got to say this, she won't remember it, but when my wife was doing her practicum up in Alert Bay with Sandy Wilson, I got stuck with babysitting these two brats, Corey and Jody. Jody was 5 years old at the teacherage. I have a picture, and she doesn't change much. She still looks like her dad. But anyway, just a small world.
Canada's a very small world. Thank you, sir, for your story, and there's a lot to reflect on. Back to you, sir, with the mask. There you go. There we go.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Thank you very much for coming here, Mr. Prime Minister. My reason for coming here today is a little bit different than most everyone else's here. My name is Adam Hayes. I suffer from Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a very aggressive form of cancer. I do chemotherapy every other week, and one of the great concerns I have for me and people in my position is the cost of pharmaceutical drugs. I have to take injections twice a month, 5 days a week, twice a month into my abdomen in order to keep my white blood cell count up. Those cost about $800 a set. And for a guy like me who's not able to work right now, I'm off work, it's a real burden. So while Pharmacare does provide, the provincial system provides some coverage for that, it's not enough. There is a significant cost there. So my question is, what is you and the Liberal government going to do to help alleviate the cost of pharmaceuticals for people in my position? Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for highlighting something that doesn't just affect you. It affects our seniors. It affects Canadians across the country who are faced with the too high price of prescription drugs. When we got elected, we committed to working with the provinces as a first step to do more of a bulk buyers program, to actually leverage the amount individually provinces in healthcare systems were spending on drugs, to realize that if we had a larger amount of purchasing power, we could drive those costs down. We are in the process of doing that, and that's very much a first step. We are continuing to look at what those next steps are, how we can move forward on reducing the cost of prescription drugs for all Canadians. There's discussions that we're engaged in, both leading up to budgets and leading up towards the next mandate that we're already thinking about. It's something that we've heard regularly. I know the Liberal Party is going to be debating a motion on pharmacare at our upcoming convention in the spring, and I look forward to continuing to engage in this to help you and to help an awful lot of people who are facing very difficult choices in their life because of the high cost of medication. So thank you for sharing your story today with us. Thank you. Thank you. You in the red, please. Yes. No, straight behind. No, sorry, behind, the red shirt. Nope, okay. We'll do you first and then the red. Okay, plaid first and then red afterwards. Okay.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for coming to Nanaimo. I'd like to ask when the Liberal government is going to recognize the opioid crisis hitting our national country. And when are you going to build, you want to grow economy, where are rehab centers that would help our Canadians and our children and all these people suffering from mental health and addictions?
Thank you. First of all, we do recognize the opioid crisis. I've been on ride-alongs in the downtown east side. I've met with frontline workers. We've been working with provincial health officers. We've been coordinating with health systems across the country to address the opioid crisis that, as people know, doesn't have one simple solution to it. We've done a number of things, border controls, on pill presses, on packages, working with international partners, particularly China, on the production of fentanyl and carfentanil and the flow of it, working with our medical community around prescription guidelines for opioids, working with the harm reduction community to make sure that we're getting more safe consumption sites and investing in treatment and rehabilitation centers. There's a lot more to do. The federal government is doing everything we can. We're always happy to do more. A lot of it is provincial and municipal, and we're working with them as well. But we are facing tragedies. I know you have faced terrible tragedies that have no business in a country like Canada. We should be able to keep our communities and our kids safe. We are failing in the opioid crisis, and it is something we need to redouble our efforts on to honor those we have lost and to make sure that we don't keep losing some of our most beautiful, best, and brightest. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those pictures. Yes.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for enduring our wet coast weather to be here today. And it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing today, and I appreciate that. I had a question written out, and I'm not going to read it because you already addressed this issue. But I want to bring it up again because I think your answer was a little bit disingenuous. I have read the clause in the Canadian Summer Jobs application form that is required to be ticked off before you can even proceed to apply, and it speaks about core value.
A core mandate.
Core mandate, okay. All right. But in order to apply for these grants, you have to tick that box. And as a person of faith who believes in the sanctity of human life, as do millions of other Canadians, you understand that, I take issue with that clause, the way it's written, because it strikes at the heart of our core values. When your father brought the Charter of Rights to Canada, he made sure to enshrine freedom of religion and conscience. And as a person of faith, my conscience would not allow me to tick off that box. And I know that is true for millions of people across this country. So, to honor your father's legacy and the intention of the Charter of Rights to allow freedom of conscience and freedom of religion, will you honor your father's legacy by removing that offensive clause from the Canada Summer Jobs application form?
Thank you. I reflect a lot on my father's legacy in a number of different ways. And one of the things that came up a lot when I made the initial decision that based on overwhelming vote from Liberal Party membership at a convention, that the Liberal Party would be a pro-choice party. When I made that decision, there was a lot of people who came out and said, no, you're limiting rights and freedom of conscience, and you need to be able to have diversity within your political party. And I reflected a lot on my father and on a conversation I had with him when I was about 16 years old. He, as you probably know, as many of you will know, in 1968 moved forward with the omnibus legislation that decriminalized homosexuality and regularized divorce. Until that point, divorce, you had to prove infidelity, and there were different rules for men and for women, and it was totally unfair. So he actually brought in legislation that made divorce accessible, fair, equal for all Canadians. Fast forward to a number of years later, in the mid-'80s, when I'm having a conversation with him, and he's sort of out of the blue. My parents had separated, my mom had got remarried, and he said to me, I just want you to know something, Justin. I kind of feel bad, but I'll never be able to provide you another mother figure in our home because I don't believe in divorce, and I don't believe that I could get remarried. So you're sort of stuck with a bachelor dad for the rest of my life anyway. And that really caused me to reflect on the fact that years before he moved forward on a piece of legislation that was fair and right for Canada, that his own personal faith didn't align with or allow for on a personal level. The request he had of my mom is that she not get remarried in a church, that she get remarried in a courthouse, which was fine. But that was the reality in my family. Now, I'm Catholic. And I had a wonderful conversation with the Cardinal of Quebec City, who's become a good friend on this issue and on issues of, on a personal level, how do I reconcile my own faith, my own conscience, my own beliefs with my duties and my responsibility as a leader protecting society and protecting everyone's rights. And where it came down to for me when I made the decision that no Liberal MP could vote in favor of limiting abortion rights for women if they wanted to be a Liberal MP, was a simple balancing act. The argument of freedom of conscience for a member of Parliament to be able to vote the way they wanted had to be balanced, because everything in the Charter is a balancing of opportunities, against the rights of a woman to control her own reproductive choices. And for me, it was very simple. If you want to be a Liberal, you don't get to vote to limit women's rights, particularly ones that have been so hard fought for. And technically, that doesn't even impose my views on Liberal members. It just says you don't get to vote a particular way. Your beliefs are your beliefs. I mean, I like to think and hope that all members of the Liberal Party are pro-choice, but I recognize that people of faith, like myself, on a personal level, may not align with those public decisions and those public responsibilities we have to serve the entirety of our communities and defend rights at the same time. So on the issue of Canada Summer Jobs, that box that asks about the core mandate of the organization. Now, you can make a leap between, well, this is a Catholic day camp, and the core mandate of the Catholic Church has to do with the sanctity of life, and you can frame it that way if you like. But that's not what the question is. That's not what the box is all about. The box is about what is the core mandate of the activity or the job that you are applying to get summer students to do? And if that job, regardless of the beliefs of the organization, if that job is to limit or to promote the limiting of women's rights, then we're not going to give you government funding. You can continue to believe what you like and feel what you like and speak for what you like and even have the activities you like. That's all protected under the Charter. But don't expect government funding, not from this government. The last government was fine with it. This government is unequivocal. We're not going to give funding for activities that seek to limit or remove fundamental rights from women or LGBT communities or others. I hope that helps. Next question. You in the purple there. Yes. No, that's you. No, in the black hat. Yes.
Thank you, Justin Trudeau, for coming today to Nanaimo. I got up very early this morning to be here from Victoria. My name is Jill Sharp. And I voted for you, and there's many things that you've done that I'm so pleased to see, and such a proud Canadian. And I also want to say that to be here today and to hear the blessing and the prayer that came to open the ceremonies is a part of reconciliation for me, for my background as a Canadian. And I just hope that when you say that you're here to dialogue with us, that you'll take back with you this idea that the economy and the environment can be one, or that we can move forward in innovative ways. And my question is around your commitment to innovation, technology, to actually imagine a different kind of future. So we are not actually this divide right now where we are risking our ocean safety for this idea of big business. As society, we've managed to dream amazing things, put people on the moon. We have you here now to represent our interests. And if someone were to come and put a proposal on the table today, for example, like taking the bitumen oil and making it into little chunks like hockey pucks, very Canadian, and can transport that in Canadian railway cars safely across our country. Like, why are we having this discussion that it's the economy environment? Why are we not finding ways to utilize those resources safely? And if it's a different answer now, if something else comes in the next 2 months, would you be willing to make a different decision? Because as Canadians, I would like to see that we don't pit Alberta against BC, that we don't pit provinces against national interests, and that to innovate as a culture, as a society, as human beings, we must do. We need to innovate. So
thank you. Extremely well said. The only reflection I'd sort of add to that, and you said it extremely nicely, is it's not just about big business. It's also about people who work in the resource industries, communities in Alberta and elsewhere across this country who are counting on being able to raise their families and have success as well. And we have to think about all Canadians. For many, many years, whether we like it or not, the Canadian economy did extraordinarily well because of the success and the contributions of Albertans' hard work to our community and to our country. So that's something we recognize. We know we need to find solutions to move technologically forward beyond our dependence on fossil fuels, beyond our dependence on oils, and we are investing significantly in that. But there is going to be a transition time. And in our reflection, the twinning of an existing pipeline. I mean, the Kinder Morgan pipeline is right now delivering bitumen, diluted bitumen to the coast and to markets overseas. We are going to be expanding, twinning, doubling an existing pipeline while we figure out how we're going to move forward to be less reliant on oil. I'm absolutely in agreement that we do need to invest in how we move forward concretely. We need to find solutions. We're not there yet. We have to manage this transition forward in the right way. And that's, we're running out of time, and there's a few more questions I want to take, but I want to thank you for your point, and thank you for your contributions. You, sir. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
There's a gentleman with a question here. Will you allow him to ask the question? Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for this open, true...
Sorry, sir has a question.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Sir, I've asked the question for, sir has a question.
Mr. Prime Minister,
Okay. Oh, we were doing so well there for a while.
Mr. Prime Minister,
yes.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Guys, let him ask his question. Okay. Are you going to respect his question? His question. Thank you. Sir. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Sorry,
She's
go ahead.
gone now. It's my turn.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you again for this true opportunity. I'm David Conda, and I've been lucky enough to live in BC for 60 years. Thank you all for your support. In 2016, on the 3rd of October, the Department of Finance cancelled the personal residence exemption in living trusts. The collateral damage is devastating. The personal residence exemption enables all Canadian residents to sell their homes with the gain tax-free. It's been our law for 46 years. In 1966, my son Alan was born in BC. He's now 53. Physically, he's fine at 160 pounds and 5'7", but he's mentally handicapped and autistic. He seldom speaks one word. He cannot read or write. He will never be able to manage his own affairs. All his life, our family has cared for him. After my wife died in 2009, we then moved Alan into a nearby home of his own with caregivers. That was 7 years ago in 2011. So Alan would have a lifelong home he knows. And because Alan does not have contractual capacity to own his own home, we put the home into a living trust for Alan. Then the 1916 October 4 law changed has placed Alan's future in peril. Without the personal residence exemption, Alan will not be able to live in his home. The 2016 law change may not yet have been enacted. It is rank evil discrimination against those Canadians who must hold their assets in a living trust because they cannot manage them. Prime Minister, we ask you to amend the 2016 proposal and stop the discrimination it creates. We ask you to restore the principal residence exemption for a living trust established before October 2016 with handicapped beneficiaries. We ask you for a grandfathering provision. Prime Minister, we ask you to do for Alan and others the right thing. Will you? Will you act and do the right thing, the fair thing, for those at the bottom of our society who need it the most? Will you, Prime Minister?
Sir, I'm going to ask some of my team to come over and take your information so we can follow up. This is, if all is as you say, and I have no reason to believe that it's not, it is something we absolutely need to follow up on and figure out, because unintended consequences like the ones you describe is certainly not what we wanted to do when we made that change. So we will follow up with you on the details of it and try and figure out a path forward so we're not penalizing Alan. Thank you.
Who should we contact?
I'm going to have someone come and talk to you right now and take all your information on that so we can follow up on that. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And we'll have time for one last question, having moved around the room. You, miss, in the white turtleneck. Yes, yes.
So, my cousin is 19 years old, works a full-time job, goes to school, and has a 2.5-year-old daughter. From the government, she has only received $500 in funding, although she cannot pay her own rent and struggles to pay off debt that she owes. How are you and the Liberal government going to support teen moms who are returning to school?
Oh, listen, do you know, is she getting the Canada Child Benefit? Because that's the first thing. It's $6,400 a year for women in that situation, or for single parents with young children.
She is not.
Okay, well then we have to make sure that she actually applies for that and gets that. Although it's supposed to be automatically delivered if she's not. That's one of the things we did right off the bat to make sure that people have enough money to raise their kids and give their kids the kinds of things that they need. The $6,400 a year for single moms or single parents with, or any parent at the lowest income levels is a significant step forward in reducing child poverty, and she should absolutely be getting that tax-free in a every month payment to help on that. On top of that, there are lots of income support programs and lots of programs to help young moms go back to school or succeed and get the kind of support they need, because we need, and we've got two lives at stake here, your friend, your cousin, and her future in terms of getting a good education, getting a good job, but also at the same time being able to be there to be the great mom I know she wants to be for her child. So we have to do a better job, obviously, of making sure that people know the supports that are out there. We have to do a better job of ensuring those supports are there. And whether it's the National Housing Strategy, whether it's investments we've made in post-secondary education to allow people to have more upfront grants so that they can pay for their education, whether it's making sure that you don't have to start paying back any student loans until you're making at least $25,000 a year. There's lots of things that we've put into this situation. We have to make sure that she's not falling through any cracks. So again, please give your information or your cousin's information, and we'll follow up on that. Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, for coming out today. This was a great opportunity for me to hear from all of you. I hope you learned as much as I did. I certainly had a wonderful time. Thank you for the welcome back to this great university. I was here in 2004. It's great to see you all. Merci tout le monde. Have a great day.